Hi there, my name is Brittany Newman, and today I'll be speaking to you about embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander education into secondary schools. I would first like to start off by acknowledging the country. I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners and ongoing custodians of the land in which this presentation is being conducted, the Wulgurukapa and Bindal people. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Australia is a vast country made up of many cultures and languages, and this is something that is to be celebrated. Embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. Teachers' prior knowledge of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives is critical to the teaching process. Reflecting on personal knowledge, so my own history, my beliefs, my attitude, or reflect on how I perceive particular perspectives. When teaching Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, you need to consider three distinct areas: the personal histories of Indigenous Australians, the personal histories of the local area, and the personal histories of non-Indigenous Australians. So what are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives? Perspectives are ways of seeing the world. Perspectives affect the way we interact with the environment and the perceptions we have about ourselves, our culture, and the way we see others. Personal and family experiences, group and religious affiliations, linguistic understandings, media, text and visual representations, cultural beliefs and values all contribute to an individual's perspective or standpoints. So my perspectives and standpoints may be different to yours, but we all need to come together to understand. Perspectives are not limited to a particular way of viewing or experiencing the world from one specific group or cultural perspective, individual and collective identities. So people are allowed to have different perspectives and opinions, but you also need to be aware of other people's perspectives and opinions as well. When you're embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, it's important to consider how colonial history has impacted on an understanding of traditional custodianships and access to land rights. So still to this day, there is a struggle for land rights. Oral history and written record inconsistencies. You will see that between two different papers or two different textbooks, a different perspective will be seen. There are also disputes over language boundaries and traditional custodianship rights still happening to this day. So how do you actually embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives? So you can look at it from a professional and personal accountability point of view, so from your own as a teacher, the organisational environment, so the environment of your school, the curriculum and pedagogy, so the content and how you choose to teach that content, and community engagement. So why is it important? Of the just over 206,000 Aboriginal students or Torres Strait Islander students in school, 83.8% of them were enrolled. Queensland has the second highest number of Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander full-time students after New South Wales. So this means we really need to be aware of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students in our classrooms, because it's more than likely we will have at least one. So how can this be embedded? This framework, developed by Young Porter 2009, shows that you can do it in a multitude of ways, from story sharing, community links, deconstruct and reconstruct, non-linear, land links, symbols and images, non-verbal, and learning maps. Furthermore, the holistic planning and teaching framework developed by Dr. Ernie Grant, who is a North Queensland local, exposes the framework to explain to students that they are to use the framework in order to understand the story. It will allow them to see how a story is constructed from an Aboriginal worldview. Using this framework will help students understand and contextualise the stories they are reading or events they are researching. The holistic planning and teaching framework can be used in a multitude of ways and is not specific to any one learning area. So you can look at it from the land point of view. So where do I come from? What is my heritage? What are the physical features of the landscape? You could look at it from the language. So what languages do you speak? What would you hear and say when you were on that land? Who is speaking? And what messages are being sent for what purpose? Furthermore, you could have culture. So what are you doing? What do you do? And how are you spending the time? Then we have time. So it explores the significant events that might occur in the event in history or tell a story. You have place. Place refers to places of significance to the author or individual in which you are speaking. Relationships are between people and other people, between people and the land. So according to the Australian curriculum, it can be done by looking at the people, the culture, and the country and place and forming identity. According to the Australian curriculum in English, students begin to engage with the priority as they develop an awareness and appreciation of and respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander literature. This includes storytelling traditions, so oral narratives, and comparing literature. Students will learn to develop respectful, critical understandings of the social, historical, and cultural context associated with different uses of language features and text structures, including images and visual language. So what do I need to ask myself when I am planning to embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives? How will the content with Indigenous knowledge or perspectives and procedural knowledge be taught? What varied ways will I use it to reinforce it? How will the declarative and procedural knowledge be taught? What varied ways will I use to reinforce it? How do I know about preferred learning styles of the students in my class? How will students demonstrate their learning? How will I ensure that the Indigenous knowledge learnt is refined and extended by students within the class? And how will students use the Indigenous knowledge meaningfully in the classroom context, community, and in the future? So for this Year 7 English unit, it focused on language and literature, where in the first part, students undertook NAPLAN preparation, and in the second part, students read a class novel called Boy Overboard, in which they had to read and then respond with a persuasive speech with a topic chosen from their novel. So some of the additions that were made were that at the conclusion of each week, students were exposed to a new Wulgarukaba and or Bindal word of the week. The acknowledgement of country was done at the start of the term and was conducted by the classroom teacher to pay their respects to the local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Resource tasks and different activities were replaced in the unit plan, so students were actually exposed to Indigenous literature. Resources were used to replace existing ones to expose students to these perspectives through persuasive text and stereotyping. A yarning circle was also used to replace the existing group work activities. This change is to allow for the collaborative work in a respectful way, so it gave students the opportunity to have a voice in the classroom with everyone paying attention and listening to them, and also allowed the other students to understand and listen. The unit plan also included a meeting with local elders to ensure students can have a connection to country, because that is one of the most important parts of embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. A yarning circle is a traditional Aboriginal method of sharing and listening to ideas and thoughts. You need a stick or another object that signifies who is speaking and who needs to be listened to. Using the holistic planning and teaching framework, looking at culture, language, and relationships, for their assessment, students needed to respond to one of the three topics. Number one, the main character in the novel is a very strong teenager who goes through a variety of hardships. Do you think that teenagers are stronger than adults give them credit for? Justify your opinion. So when you're teaching students about this topic, you could think about what kind of hardships do Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people experience and are still experiencing to this day. Number two, you have heard the saying that Australia is the lucky country. Do you agree or disagree that Australian teenagers have an easier life than teenagers in other countries? Why or why not? Why do you believe Australia is lucky? Did our main character feel connected to the cultural language and relationships he came to when he came to Australia? That's another thing you can ask your students and discuss in class. Number three, some students believe that the novel is boring and not relevant to Year 7 students today. Do you agree or disagree that the novel is irrelevant? Do you think the novel should be replaced by a different one? Justify your opinion. So we looked at how refugees are treated in Australia and why they chose to come to Australia. But why do you think they are different or the same to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders living in Australia as well? Some final advice. Don't think I can't teach Aboriginal perspectives because I don't understand anything about Aboriginal culture. I've never met an Aboriginal person. Go and do your research and learn about your own country. There is so much out there. There are plenty of poetry readings, performances, art exhibitions, and performances that you can attend. You can meet with local Aboriginal and Torres